I have a big job, and my job actually spans across lots of different ideas and platforms. In simplest terms, I guess I would describe my job as being the person here at the ASO who oversees the product. I am the person on the staff of the ASO who manages the schedule for the orchestra and determines what choices we make about what we do with each work week and each service, help to prioritize choices about doing this type of a concert or event versus this one, and helping the staff to factor in revenue versus artistic impact and balancing art and commerce all the time. Chief in my role here is that I oversee electronic media, which basically covers anytime the orchestra is recorded and reproduced, broadcast, anything of the like. I'm responsible for both understanding the terms and the parameters under which we can do it, negotiating the terms with other partners about how that would occur, and overseeing that the ASO manages the resources to make those kind of events happen. And that spans not only from a very specific and local role here in Atlanta, in working with the players in the orchestra to plan, discuss, and promote those kind of activites, but overseeing our recording arrangement with Telerik and Concord and other recording partners, as well as a role that I play as a part of a national management negotiation team that sits in tandem with members of orchestras and opera companies and ballet companies from all around the country in North America to hammer out and negotiate current and future media agreements. Add to that the notion that and the charge of me overseeing the touring and all the movement of the orchestra from A to B, not only on a local level to deal with concerts outside of Symphony Hall here, as well as touring the orchestra to Carnegie Hall, Florida, West Coast, domestic tours, as well as European tours and Asia and all kinds of international work as well. I'm trying to think. Further to that, I guess I would say that on a more local level, my job is to help the ASO in sort of a very general and overall way interface with the community. I'm the person on the staff who is the contact and go-to for major civic events that come up, and I'm the person who rallies the staff around responding to them. Case in point being things like a 9/11 relief concert we did several years ago, American Red Cross events, Mrs. King's homegoing services, and managing various sorts of events like that. I'm the point on that. I could probably go on and on, but that'll give you at least a general framework. It's a big job. I'm never bored. I guess I feel that the background I had before that prepared me very well for it. Probably leads into the next sort of question about how did I get from where I was to this. And the quick story for me is I come from Atlanta, and I was in the youth orchestra here for 4 years. So I've been an instrumental musician since I was 7, studied it with a passion and with a voracious appetite to succeed as a performer all through school, got a bachelor's degree at the Eastman School in bassoon performance. Towards the end of my tenure there, about the end of my 3rd year, I decided I might want to explore administrative career and just went after it. I started getting information, applying for internships, getting as close to the product as I could, and literally just one of the beauties of being young and not necessarily knowing what you don't know, I started to apply for entry-level jobs with orchestras and was lucky enough to be hired for one. And I started my first job at the Florida Philharmonic in Fort Lauderdale as an operations assistant, where half my job was loading and unloading the truck, and the other half of my job was ferrying artists around and other tasks assigned. And a lot of my performance focused friends were very critical of that role and saying, how could you be a performance degree person from the Eastman School of Music and wind up driving a truck sometimes and driving people around? And I just said it's a means to an end, and it served me well. I was there about 9.5 years. I left there to assume a position at the Performing Arts Center of Greater Miami, which was an interesting construction project for a $465 million capital project to build an opera house, symphony hall, and a black box theater in downtown Miami, Florida. Was there 8 months, was recruited to the ASO right after I started, came here in 2000, have been here ever since. I would add to, just in the spirit of, I think, what you're trying to capture in these type of videos, about 7 years through my tenure at the Florida Philharmonic, I did go back and I got an MBA from the University of Florida, which was more, it was less vocational and less of acquiring tools that I thought were 100% directly applicable to my role, but rather a 2-year experience and exercise in taking a step back and thinking about how I think about problems and solving business problems and approaching goal setting and challenges and things like that. I think the experiences of the people that I was in school with were as much of the education as the actual curriculum, and I think that's how graduate business programs design them. I suffered and slaved through difficult economics and accounting curriculum there, but it made me better at approaching the responsibilities I have now. So I think for just a sort of what role that would play in sort of a composite overview of how I've come to be in the position I'm in, I would think it was an important exercise, but more focused on growth than it was adding tools to my toolbox. My opinion, of course. I believe that one of the most important factors in somebody being able to do my job is to have a broad perspective. My job involves arguing the economic realities almost as much as it does fighting for the artistic priority. And to be able to walk that tightrope, I think you need to be able to both respect and have a sense of your own relationship with different challenges and different perspectives. I happen to be fortunate that I have a graduate business degree. I was an instrumental performer for a large part of my life. As a college musician, I was an extra musician with the ASO, so I had that opportunity too. So I think putting all that together, when I sit down to, as an example, negotiate an individual contract for a player, a member of the ASO, which is part of my role too, I can come at it not specifically having been a professional orchestral musician for 20 years like they may be, but I do think I can bring to the equation a relative sense of discipline and commitment to a performance type of career, or focus at least in a chapter of your life. I think I can have a sense of what it means to be a part of an organization like this, and where I wouldn't ever presume to put myself in their specific shoes. I think what I can intelligently, hopefully, bring to the situation is a sense of awareness about what they may be dealing with, so that when I sit down to try to figure out how we come up with a fair conclusion to their compensation or their overall employment arrangement with the ASO, it's grounded in some degree of context, and it's not just completely arbitrary. I think that helps build credibility, and I hope in turn with the players they sense that breadth of experience and that context frames a conversation about that type of an agenda or issue in a meaningful and relevant way. Well, I'll answer it in a couple of different ways. I think as to touring in other countries, I can only speak from a relative standpoint, because the ASO has never been able to garner the funding in my tenure to actually travel beyond domestic borders. So my role for that has been to build opportunities and set up touring opportunities abroad. None of them have ever been realized in the 9 years I've been here, for various reasons, almost exclusively resource constraints. I think in terms of challenges, I guess I'd answer it in sort of two parts. One, the challenges that I would face in large measure aren't, some of the major challenges are not driven by any economic factors that would be different now than they would be 10 years ago. I think in a community like Atlanta, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is relevance. It is the central thread to all the work I do, and in any association I have with people about the symphony outside of the symphony family. When I'm interfacing with people in the city or around the state or in touring opportunities, why are we different? Why do we matter? Why should Atlantans and our community care about what we're doing, and why should they believe it's important? And I think that arts organizations have to be realistic and frank in their own internal dialogue about it, and really, as much as they can, try to focus not on what they hope and what they would wish the communities would think about their organizations, but try to be very realistic and honest in their assessment of where the community currently is at relative to the role that an arts organization can play in that community. And I think that's the place you have to start. And unfortunately, I think many arts organizations shy away from really doing the hard work and the hard analysis and the real honest calculus about where the community currently is. But I believe it's vital, because if you don't do that, then I don't think you can really build a solid plan for how you advance them from wherever they might be. It's sort of grounded in a sort of opacity or sort of vagueness that, as a business, makes it very hard to make strategic decisions. The second half of that, sort of coming back to the place of where we were all at in 2009 with this current economy, is that people are just making more decisions and more difficult decisions about where they spend discretionary money. And I think, back to the point of relevance, I think as arts people, I think we need to strive to be incredibly capable business people and be able to communicate that arts organizations are complicated businesses, and that managing them and running them well in many ways takes just as much, if not a different kind of acumen, than running a major corporation. And I think in part and parcel of that, the current challenges we all face with people having limited resources is that there's more competition for less discretionary dollars. As arts organizations, we're an entertainment product. We are competing with people making choices to go to dinner, to go to a movie, to go to a show, to go to a sporting event. And we've got to somehow manage to figure out a way to get to the top of that list in people's choices. And in many ways, I think, try to continue to move arts along the spectrum further towards a place of not a discretionary, arbitrary entertainment function, but rather something that is an enriching experience that people feel is really important, more than just something that entertains them. It doesn't mean that you can't have both, but I think saying that we're only entertainment is half of the equation. And if we say that we're all about high art and attending to people's souls in some kind of ethereal, vague way, I don't think we're being good stewards of meeting people where they are. And I think the best place you want to be as an arts organization is being able to be a compelling entertainment organization that people feel is something that they need, not just that they want. In Atlanta, I think I would answer it this way. I believe we have, with much too small of a segment of the community. I think that the biggest challenge for the ASO in Atlanta is not, and it's not, we're not unique in terms of this challenge relative to our peers in other communities, but it's not that people in Atlanta don't value what we do. I think Atlanta is still a young community, and I think Atlanta is still figuring out what it means to be a major arts institution, and I think Atlanta is still on the journey of figuring out what types of support are really necessary to sustain those types of arts institutions. Atlanta is still a young city. I mean, the ASO, to put it in context, is only 65 years old, and as compared to organizations and peer organizations like New York Philharmonic and things like that, that are more than twice that age. And people have had the opportunity to grow. I mean, Atlanta is still early in its sort of chronological and philanthropic age, if you will. There are no real Rockefellers or Carnegies or Mellons in Atlanta. We hope that over time, in a few more generations down the road, that there will be those families in Atlanta who give because they understand that an organization is important. Whether or not it may be the most vital thing to them at the moment or not, they understand that their family or their predecessors invested in something for future generations, and it's more about continuing a legacy so that Atlanta as a whole prospers than it is just supporting something that they may individually like. I guess I would answer by saying that I wish I knew the answer. If I did, I'd probably be in a position to sell that to the community, make enough money to endow the Orchestra to be the most healthy and stable institution that exists in the community now. Unfortunately, I don't have that type of vision, but to take a stab at, I think, the question you're asking, I believe that the path for arts organizations is to continue to focus with fantastic passion on what it is that they do, and that to be more specific, what is really their core product, their core mission. What is the part of the product that brought the staff and the artistic folks and the instrumental musicians in our particular case, and the chorus in our case, to being here? What is it that we do the best? And try to really focus on not only doing what we do as well as we possibly can, but back to fundamentals, try to share that excitement and passion about what it is we do and why we believe it's important in a way that hopefully penetrates Atlanta and it is infectious in all the positive kind of connotations you could attach to it. I mean, at the end of the day, art should move people, and if art doesn't move people, we need to think about why it doesn't, and recalibrate all of our focus on trying to make sure that it does. Because if it doesn't, then it's either not great art, or somehow we're not putting ourselves forth as artists in a way that's meaningful. Neither one's great.